Hi, everyone. This is Joe Dellicarpini. I'm a meteorologist at the National Weather Service's Boston office and a Norwood resident. And we're here today to take a look at the 2024 hurricane season and why it's been so active lately. So, yes, it's no surprise it has been active. We just passed through the M storm Milton. Hurricane Milton made landfall in Florida. And our next one on the list is Nadine. But it actually was fairly quiet through July and August, and things really picked up in September as a number of storms developed. Most of them remained well out to sea in the open Atlantic, but a couple of them, Helene and most recently Milton, originated in the Gulf of Mexico and brought some devastating impacts to portions of the country. So the hurricane season peaked really around September 10th. That's kind of the normal time of year for our peak in the Atlantic. And we're on the downward trend now, but even through October, you can still have a fair number of tropical storms and hurricanes in the Atlantic. And again, about two-thirds of them form after August 28th. So we're on the downside of the curve, but still a ways to go here in October and even into early November. So why has this year been active? A couple of key factors. One is the fact that El Nino, which was so prevalent last winter, as you remember, it was warm and there really wasn't a lot of snow. That has gone away, and we're now going to be heading into La Nina as we get through the fall and the upcoming winter. So El Nino tends to not favor too many hurricanes in the Atlantic. The winds tend to be a little bit stronger up at the jet stream level. It tends to kind of rip any tropical storms or hurricanes apart before they can really develop. So once that goes away, it tends to be a little bit more favorable as far as winds in the upper atmosphere. The other factor is really the above normal sea surface temperatures, and you can see an image of that on the right. Those oranges that are in the Gulf of Mexico and off the much of the East Coast. Those are water temperatures that are well above normal, and that really helps fuel tropical storms and hurricanes. So then most people are asking, well, okay, there's been so many storms. Why have they missed the East Coast? Why have none of them threatened us up here in New England? And there's a couple of reasons. One is just the prevailing weather pattern. So we really can't tell ahead of time whether or not a storm, on a seasonal basis will make landfall. It really comes down to the weather pattern that's in place at the time the storm forms. And a lot of the prevailing weather patterns in this month of September and October have steered the hurricanes and tropical storms either into the Gulf of Mexico or kept them well out to sea over the open Atlantic. And you can see the weather map here on the right. High pressure has really been dominant over the Great Lakes and Northeast over the fall here, and that just keeps the storms away. It blocks them from really coming up the East Coast. Now, the other part is if we go up a little bit in the atmosphere to kind of where the airplanes fly, the prevailing weather patterns have really also steered them out to sea or kept them well to our south. You can see we've had strong west to northwest winds across the Great Lakes and into New England, and that really just prevents anything from making a track up the East Coast. So, just the prevailing weather pattern. That's almost by chance that this weather pattern is in place, but it certainly kept us safe from any tropical storms or hurricanes. So just to reiterate, when we look at forecast information, we have our forecast cone from the National Hurricane Center, and this is probably the most widely used forecast graphic that's out there. Remember, it shows the probable track of the storm, and the cone represents historical forecast error. It's not specific to a particular storm. It's just at different time ranges. That's the typical forecast error. Now, keep in mind, the center of the storm can be outside of the cone about a third of the time. It doesn't always remain within the cone, and it most certainly does not indicate the extent of potential impacts. So, wind, flooding, storm surge, even tornadoes can occur outside of this cone. So, that's always an important thing to remember. And as we go through the end or the remaining times of our tropical season this year, always keep tabs on things. At NWS Boston, we have a tropical briefing page that's available. It's weather.gov/Boston/tropical. You can find all the latest information here from the latest outlooks, satellite images, any active storms ongoing. And should a storm threaten us here in New England, you'll get localized threats and impacts as well as some local forecast information that you can certainly use. And of course, preparedness information. It's always a good idea to be prepared for significant weather up in our region. So that's a look at the hurricane season so far as of the fall and why it's been so active. If you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email at the email address below. It's joseph.delicarpini@noaa.gov. Otherwise, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.